Okay, good evening. It is 6:30 p.m., December 19th, 2024. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the San Lorenzo Valley Water District. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yes, President Hill,
Present.
Vice President Smalley,
Here.
Director Foltz,
Here.
Director Lang,
Here.
Director Largay.
Here.
All right, all are in attendance.
Thank you. Changes to the agenda. Additions to the agenda, if any, may only be made in accordance with California Government Code Section 549, 54.2, the Ralph M. Brown Act, which includes but is not limited to additions for which the need to take action is declared to have arisen after the agenda was posted, as determined by a 2/3 vote of the Board of Directors, or if less than 2/3 of the members are present, the unanimous vote of those members present. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none. I see nothing online. Hands up. Moving on, oral communications. This portion of the agenda is reserved for oral communications by the public on any subject that lies within the jurisdiction of the district and is not on the agenda. Any person may address the Board of Directors at this time. Normally, presentations must not exceed 3 minutes in length, and individuals may only speak once. Please understand that the Brown Act limits what the board can do regarding issues not on the agenda. No action or discussion may occur on issues outside of those already listed on today's agenda. Any director may request that a matter raised during oral communication be placed on a future agenda. Do we have any oral communications from the public? Seeing none in the room, do we have any online? Let's see. Seeing no hands up. Okay, we'll move on. Item number 4, presentations, oath of office for Directors Largay and Alina Lang.
All right, we're going to administer the oath. I'll come with you guys. All right. So we'll do Alina first. What you'll do is I'm just going to have you read it because this just makes it cleaner. I'm just going to read this paragraph here. Just put your right hand up.
All right. I, Lena Lang, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of invasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Awesome. All right. And sign blue. Well, I have to sign this as well and mail this back, so I'll make you a copy. Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you. It's official.
Okay.
Brian.
I, Brian Largay, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, next item is a FEMA status update by Aptum, our consultant firm that is helping us with FEMA claims.
Good evening, everyone. So we probably should have done this maybe a year ago.
Probably, yes.
Probably would eliminate some questions. And,
Okay, please introduce yourself.
yes, Brandon Conatani. I'm with Aptum. We're the consultant for doing FEMA recovery, public assistance.
Thank you.
You ready?
We're getting the slides up.
Guess we did take that.
There you go. All right, this is a little what I'm gonna speak about as the kind of 30,000 foot view of the FEMA PA process. I mean, there's a lot of details and stuff that we probably don't need to get into at this point, but just kind of hitting on the statuses and some questions you may have on what the process is. So we'll also get the project status updated, releases after different PWs that are where they're currently at in the FEMA process. Reimbursement update, kind of a high level. We plan on giving a more detailed dashboard and status of everything. The finance committee looking like February, so just with the holidays, try to get it in there for the agenda. I don't think we're going to make it, so most of my staff is off for the rest of the year. So, and then we'll take steps of what we're looking at going forward. All right, next slide. So this is kind of an overall flow of what the PA process is and kind of how active. So I don't know if you maybe around when we did the proposal for the original RFP, we had this slide in there. So it goes through different stages, and then all the way from pre-planning all the way to close out. We can go to the next slide. So we're past this point right now, so kind of touch on this pretty high level and quickly. So pre-disaster, you want to do some pre-planning. You have your disaster management plan, your debris plan, your hazard mitigation plan. These are things you do prior to disaster and pre-contract. Maybe some companies that do this and set up for when you need them and activate them prior to disaster. So this is a big push by FEMA right now to get these plans in place so you're ready for if something happens, identifying hazards, and so on, just to be prepared when it does happen. So you've experienced quite a few in the past few years now, so you kind of know what you're looking at, what your hazards are, wildfire, floods, rain events, straight line winds, that type of thing. I guess tornadoes now. Seismic as well. So that's pre-event planning. So then you're moving into stage one. So this is post-disaster. So something happening that you may need to respond to. You make your request for public assistance is the first step. So that lets people know, hey, we have some damages. We need some assistance. And you submit your actual application to FEMA through the grants portal. Grants portal is like their tracking system to keep tabs on everything, documentation, all your projects, that's such. So after you submit your request for public assistance, it goes through the approval process. Once you've been approved, they schedule a applicant briefing. So what this does is explains the PA process to you and the requirements, documentation, and what your financial responsibility is as well. So there's some cost share with some of this, but it depends on the timing. But it could be 90-10, 90%, 10%, 75-25 that you may be responsible for. So the next, after your applicant briefing, you don't want to leave your customers high and dry, right? So there's emergency work you need to do in case someone's damaged, discontinued service. So they understand that. So you can do this emergency work, keep all your receipts, invoices, time, your ports account, labor, materials, equipment, that type of thing. Document as much as you possibly can. Pictures, GPS coordinates. This is all stuff they're going to require going forward to reimburse you for your emergency work, right? So it's your category A and B. After this emergency work, they'll come in when it's people will send out a site assessor, do a preliminary damage assessment, kind of get a high level of what damages you have. Not necessarily quantity and all, but like kind of just a general. Hey, 90% of our infrastructure is damaged, or whatever kind of assessment they need to make to kind of gauge, what kind of assistance you're going to need and kind of plan for it. Next slide. So After the preliminary damage assessment, they moved you into a stage 2. So this is when you start lining out your different projects and your cost formulation. So you'll have a recovery scoping meeting with your with FEMA. So it tells you like lines out your different projects and a kind of a cost estimate of what you think it's going to cost going forward to repair it back to for your permanent repairs. They'll also schedule an exploratory call with you. It's the intro, kind of establish that relationship. Have any questions or concerns, you can present to them to ask and see what you may need. So after this, they assign a PDMG, so it's a program delivery manager. This is your contact, your day-to-day contact with FEMA. Is your basically your project manager with FEMA. Now, this may depend. We've seen a lot of turnover where they move along, so they may be here 90 days, 180 days. You may see 3 or 4 of these through the process, but it's kind of where FEMA's at. They don't have the staff, so you may not end up with this first PDMG when you finish the project. So after this, you go to a phase 2. This is where they actually send out a site inspector, get the details, measurements, pictures, that type of thing. Then they do your DDD, which is your damage description dimension. So these are your impact or damage items. They get details like the broken water main size, dimensions, GPS locations, that type of thing. So give them a little more details on what the project's going to entail to do the repairs. Next slide. So next is your phase 3. This is where I actually develop the project worksheet, which is your scope of work. This is what you get your finite cost estimates and what it's going to cost to do the repairs. You do have a chance to appeal this, so if you don't think they covered everything in your scope of work, you can do an appeal. State your case. They're usually pretty reasonable on some things. But if it's not a reimbursable expense, they're going to put their foot down. So after you develop these PWs with your PDMG, it goes to the CRC. So it's your Consolidated Resource Center. So they have 4 of these around the country. This is where they do your QA, your compliance checks, make sure everything in your project worksheet is according to the PAPA-G, which is your policy guidelines for PA. Also, any technical assistance the PDMG may need. So, say they don't know if it's going to be covered, but they can call back to the CRC to determine that, right? The timeline of this is usually 30 to 120 days. It's an estimate. Can be longer. It could be shorter depending on the size of the project. So if it's a larger project, usually takes a lot longer to go through and determine its compliance. So in this step, they also do some insurance reconciliation. So if you had insurance on most underground items are not insurable, but like a building or something, they check to make sure if you got insurance proceeds, and they'll deduct that from what the PW will cover. So they also call it duplication of benefits as well. So you might see that term DOB or insurance. So after it's gone through the CRC, they've done their checks and QA. It goes to the EHP review. So this is environmental and historic preservation. This is the longest part of the process. They make sure that you're adhering to all the environmental impacts of the project. Usually, if you're going back and burying a pipeline in the same exact spot, this is a pretty standard, and it's not much going to complicate your project. But if you want to reroute a pipeline or something, that's going to really trigger an environmental review to determine where you're pushing the pipeline doesn't affect like endangered species or some historic significant item. So currently it's about 90 to 180 days, but I think we have some right now that have been, I don't know, 9 months at this point. Been sitting in EHP review, so it's pretty tough to get a timeline on for determination. So they kind of work at their own pace. They are overwhelmed as well, so I don't expect them to speed up anything because they're short staffed too. So they have their own like little fiefdom, so they operate independently of every other part of FEMA, so they do what they want. You can't really motivate them to do anything. So after it's gone through VHP, you actually get their agreement on things. It does go through a final check and review, make sure they check all the boxes, been through all the process before you actually going to get an award or obligation. In addition, there's kind of concurrently you do a hazard mitigation for like 406. You can use some of these additional dollars to do some mitigation measures on identified hazards, but it has to be for a damage like a disaster damage item. So I'll touch on there's an additional thing called 404 hazard mitigation that you use funding on different things that aren't disaster related. So next slide. So last phase 4 of this, you've got your scope of work, you've got your budget. They've identified all the damage items. They'll kick it back to the applicant and whoever has the signature authority, use district manager or engineer, whoever you identified as authorized. It gets signed saying you concur with it. You're good. It's covering everything that was damaged, and the dollars will look good. Okay. So after you sign, it goes back to a final FEMA QA/QC review, and they send you a formal letter for your obligation to the PW. So you actually get a PW number, which goes into grants portal. You can track it. At this point, they do an exit briefing and turn it over to Cal OES to kind of manage. Once they've done the formulation, the PW, Cal OES manages it from there. They do your reimbursements and provide you with the maybe the day-to-day oversight. Next slide. So now you've got your PW. You can start your permanent work or get reimbursed for your small projects or emergency work. Like I said, the 406 mitigation is incident cause damage, and it's available to disaster damage facilities only. You can't use this money to bury a pipeline that wasn't damaged by, say, a wildfire, flood, or something. It has to be used for the specific item. So that takes you to the 404 mitigation, which is further down the line. The state will determine a amount that funding that the state can use statewide. They'll usually identify some qualified counties where, say, there's a wildfire. U County, Santa Cruz. Anybody in those counties can actually apply for those dollars, as long as the project, they apply for it and the project is under the hazard mitigation approved work. So that hazard mitigation, like I said, there's two different things. So you hear a 404 mitigation or 406, that's what they're speaking about. Next. So we've highlighted some project statuses that you may have seen on some of the reporting. In particular, pending PDMG review, pending CRC development, pending final FEMA review, applicant signed project or obligated. So I kind of touched on what those mean, and identify who has those, and what step of the process. All right, so I touched on large small projects. So FEMA they determine, so every year they change the amount. I have it on the next slide what those amounts were, but for small projects, if it's under whatever for that year, usually 130,000 below. As soon as the project is obligated, they'll send you a check. So the small projects get paid out almost immediately. Now large projects, now it's currently over $1 million. The large projects take a while. You have to actually do the work, submit a reimbursement request. They do the review and then they'll send you reimbursement. If you want to go to the next, it kind of highlights what the threshold was. So We've identified which disasters and where the threshold was. So for the 4301 and 4308, which was the Sisu fire and the floods from 2017, the actual project threshold was 123,000. So any project 123,000 and below, you got paid out from this immediately. Seems obvious. Now currently, August 4th, 2022, they changed the small project threshold to $1 million. So anything under $1 million, they consider a small project, you get paid immediately. So they saw that the volume of projects was really backlogging them, causing a lot of slowdown. So that's why they raised it to $1 million. I think it's going up again in the next year. So we'll know what the level is as the consumer price index goes up or how much workload they have. So that's why you'll see like some stuff gets paid quicker than others at this point, depending on what the project value is. It's kind of a little guideline you can see. If you want next. So we've gone through and identified, broken it down by disaster number. So the FEMA DR number is the disaster. We've gone through on each of these next slides. In terms, tells the status, what the obligated amount is, and what's been paid to date. Now we're still going through and verifying some of these payments have actually the check, y'all got it. Because we've balancing against grants portal, what FEMA says you got versus what you actually got in the bank is may not line up. So if there's any questions on any of them, obligated means obviously the project amount is there. Like I said, we're still trying to verify that, make sure that you got paid everything you're supposed to with the small projects at this point. There's still a couple. You want to go to the next one, 4308. I know this one's probably the biggest concern right here is the line treatment plant road. Garrett and I discussed it quite a bit. This $8 million is the version 1. Originally, they obligated 200,000, which wasn't enough to do anything with. And since it got damaged by another disaster. So this $8 million is the current obligated amount. But we haven't moved forward on this one due to some design and cost estimates. We think it's going to be a little more. So we may go back to them again, the FEMA, get them on site, say, hey, this is what it's going to take to fix this. Give a couple different scenarios, right? So that's why that one's on hold. Everything else is obligated. I think move forward for the most part. I think this one right here, the check is on the way. If I'm not mistaken. We just got notice that's going to be paid pretty soon. So, like I said, I'll have a little more detailed report for the finance committee. And going forward, we'll have a dashboard so you can go in and click. It'll be updated daily-ish. And if we have any other pending updates, we'll update the dashboard as well. So,
No question there. The obligated amount, is that obligated before the final costs are in, or is that the amount that they are actually going to eventually pay?
So for the small project, so in the PW formulation, they've gone through the cost estimate for the cost to fix it, right? So that's what they've come up with that number. So they've gone through with your PDMG, said, hey, here's what's damaged. Here's what we think it's going to cost, just based on whatever, real-time estimates or previous work that you've done. That's where they come with that dollar figure. Okay. Now, if it's under that small project threshold, they're going to pay that immediately, right? Yeah. So this one right here, we'll have to, as we can do it in 2 different ways. We can do it as ask for reimbursement at the end of the project, or we can do it incrementally, right? So 30%, if we finish, we can ask for reimbursement. So you're not out the whole $8 million, the whole project. So, as we get to, if we can determine what that is when we want to request reimbursement, if with that 20%, 50%, we can determine that frequency.
So the reason I'm asking is it would be very easy for us or for the public to look at a slide like that and say obligated amount. Okay, there's about $8.5 million, and assume that that's a hard number. And from what you're telling me, that's a medium hard number.
Yeah, it's a number until you hit close up, right? So if you come into and you're like a cost overrun
Yeah.
on materials or something,
Mhm.
say materials are like you're originally estimated to be $2 million.
Yeah.
And you actually, with COVID and all the other supply chain, you those are like $4 million now.
Yeah.
So as long as you can justify that amount, hey, say FEMA, this is a reasonable cost. We've got 3 bids from suppliers. Every one of them are $4 million.
Mhm.
So you can do a budget modification until close out.
Mhm.
So you can reconcile them all.
Okay, but that's, so at any given time, the obligated amount is not in concrete, it's in,
It's a starting point.
it's in slush.
Yeah.
It can move.
Yeah. So even
The bigger the project, the more it might move.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and until so this this is from 2017 when they came with that dollar. It's, we're almost 8 years later, right? Things have changed. So, and they know that. Other clients we work with them, they go back and forth and say we can justify it. They're pretty reasonable as long as you get your 3 bids.
Mhm.
That type of thing. But like I said, it's not even one other caveat, I guess. A small project. So you say you get this 75,000 initially. That was your cost estimate, but you actually you finish the project and you only came in at 60,000. They've already paid you for this, so you're gonna have to pay 15,000 back.
Mhm.
So we'll do our best to make sure that all the invoices and everything come through to
Mhm.
reach that amount, so you don't have any payback. But is something with the small projects. You since they paid up front, you may have to pay back in arrears. So, most of the time that doesn't happen because once your project's run over, but that's something just to keep in mind as well. Let's see, I think that's go to the couple slides through. Oh, we can go here. So yeah, so we've identified this is the current status in grants portal with FEMA. So you can see some are pending PMG, scoping costs, routing. We have a few RFIs coming back and forth through the PDMG that we're trying to get answered. Initial project development. This one's still is scoping. These 2 right here. So we're still trying to figure out the extent of that project and what that cost estimate are. So before you get it to review. Next.
Hang on a sec before we go. So how would we reconcile this against our project list? For example, the Alta Via pipeline. I'm assuming that that's buried somewhere in PW 549, but I can't really tell. And of course, we spent all that money, right?
I actually think it was on a previous slide. I can't remember.
But wait a sec. The Alta Via pipeline, the demolition of it was during the CZU fire. There might have been an impact during the floods, different things.
Yes.
Right. And so what I'm trying to do here is figure out, we got these big blanks for projects. There's multiple projects under each one of those line items that we have already spent money for. I want the money. Okay. So this isn't really giving me kind of a good view on where we are with respect to some of those big projects that we've already spent money on.
So we are in the process of closing out some of those that were older, that may not have been paid out yet. So some of the larger projects, we're getting the invoices and that type of thing, so we can ask for reimbursement. So what complicates some of these is they got damaged by multiple passers. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, we've had to, and we have to go back to FEMA and delineate what part got damaged by this disaster versus this disaster. We have quite a few like that, and so that really hinders the payment on some of them, so they can clearly cut that line, right? Of which is what.
Okay, my only point though is that this report, while it's helpful and it's showing based on what you're seeing here, most of the money's been paid out. It's a little misleading relative to what we've already spent for disaster recovery that isn't showing up on these reports yet.
And
That's all.
That's the finance and committee report that we're gonna have for February.
Okay, so we're gonna
might send a little
reconcile,
early, but,
we're gonna reconcile
Yeah.
all of that by then.
we're gonna go detail line by line. We're gonna-
Because that's what we need.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
This is the high level.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, we can't see from this
yeah,
where we are. I mean, we've got a project list, which is individual unitary projects that engineering is driving,
Right.
but
yeah, because.
where they are on that page, I don't know.
Because if I was looking at this, I'd say, hey, we're doing great, except for obviously the Lion plant, which we spent design money on, but not construction money.
Right.
But, you know, we look at this and say, hey, we're all great with reimbursement. No, 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 no. That is not the case.
Yeah, there is a few out there that have not been reimbursed that are high money on high ticket items. So we're trying to work through disaster by disaster, work older ones first, and so when it closes out, FEMA wants to close out first.
Yeah, especially in 2017. It's like, come on, guys, get going, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure they're
actually-
saying that.
So those are less priority than 4558, the CCU fire. They want to close this one out before the 2017.
No kidding.
Yeah, so they just told us that the other day.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. So yeah, so like I said, we'll have a more detailed, and you can actually click into it. It'll be a Power BI dashboard where you can click into. You can see all the invoices, which is PW. So you'll know where it's at that.
There might need to be some conversation about what the format would be. As a board member, I'm really most interested in bottom line summary information, not looking at individual invoices. I would like to rely on Garrett and the finance staff, Heather, to be doing that.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that the board and more importantly, the community understands where we are with respect to what we spent, what's been paid, what hasn't been paid for each disaster.
And also, what's the time lag, in my mind, between when we are spending the money and when we get reimbursed for it? Because I see all of the different timelines that you're putting out in here. And now I understand for the large projects. So whatever is over that project threshold, what's a time lag? So that we have a sense of what's our anticipated carrying time frame where we're paying the contractors and we're going to wait about 9 months, 18 months, 2 years to get. I'm not asking for that answer, now, but I'd like to see that as part of some type of analysis.
Well, and before you answer, because that is critical from a cash flow point of view.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Right, because if in fact we're not going to get reimbursed from Cal OES because they're backlogged for 2 to 3 years, we need to drastically change our cash flow positions.
Yeah.
And we may have to borrow more, may have to borrow money to cover it.
Yeah.
Where we may require something.
Oh, with this project that we have now that we're going to, well, it's 90% reimbursable, but great. But it's 90% reimbursable 2 years after we complete the work. So
this is really a serious cash flow.
yeah.
Well, so like I said, with the large projects, you can so once you pay these invoices and say every quarter you want to ask for reimbursement, right? So you can gather all these invoices from the contractor and we say every quarter we're going to ask for reimbursement. You can do that.
Yeah, what's the payable?
Pay timeline? It depends on what's going on.
Well, and
They usually pay pretty quick.
but that's what we'd like to get a sense
30 to
of.
60 days, about 5 days when you submit reimbursement.
Okay.
All right.
As well
Because-
as currently.
Because
Subject to change, but yeah.
I see one on a previous slide for the Fall Creek debris removals. That's a significant cost that was obligated. We've done the work, well beyond done the work. But there's
And
this
paid the contractors.
and paid contractors. And I saw significant dollars still
Yeah.
not
230,000,
reimbursed.
$250,000.
And it looked like it was a small project too.
Well, it was over the threshold at the
It
top.
was on slide 12 that I saw that one.
You want us to go back?
Yeah, you wanna go
Let's go
there.
back.
Yeah, it's PW 515, right? Yeah.
Why don't you all go for it?
There was one of these projects, I think
Not one.
That wasn't this, but.
Yeah.
There was some of them that were still showing as an updated amount, but
It's-
then had been withdrawn. So on some of those reports, so we tried to clean it up. Yeah.
If you can, well, do we still have 200 and some thousand that we expect to be getting? If that's the answer to that one, just clarify it so that we're not
Right,
continuing to,
and that's what we're doing now.
okay,
We're trying to verify.
as a board, ask that
Yeah,
question.
and then, so, what, Rachel's been doing is she's actually been going back and getting the physical scan of the check. So some things were showing that you didn't get paid, but you actually did. So this is as of right now, yeah, right? We're having to go back and find these checks.
Yeah, okay,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
but this is the kind of information I'd like to
All
know,
right.
so what you're looking for, the
That's-
finance report.
Are they still paying by physical check?
I guess it's direct deposit, but
Okay,
they give you a scan of this check stuff
okay,
when they email it to you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's but I say check. But yeah,
Okay.
if I can get like like I said, well, I'll put together our dashboard and then send you beforehand so you can feedback, say, hey, we'd like to see this. We can adjust and change and modify however you'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Initially, we do a similar thing for PIT, their finance committee, and I'll send it to you in that kind of format, and then you just tell me if you see different.
okay.
Yeah. Because I'm very glad to hear about the progress payment too, because I was sitting there thinking, oh, if all of the raw water pipelines are in one project, if we had to pay all the money out before we get any reimbursement,
Yeah.
we'd be dead.
That'd be,
Yeah, it's tough. No, well, some people understand that, like, they know they're small applicants, they're not gonna have $8 million, they would just sit on like for 2 years, wait for payment back, so, they've been a lot more diligent about paying the reimbursement plus, so. Do you want to go to next steps, I guess? This one I do. So yeah, like I said, we'll continue to follow the CalES and all the payment status, make sure we get the reimbursements, especially some of the small projects we were showing that didn't. But they're saying they did, so we're trying to verify that checks actually got to your account. Time extensions, I believe we just signed those last week or week before last, Garrett did, so we've submitted those to CalES, so we should be good on time extensions at this point for all the projects. Then we'll verify and update project data, funding allocation expenses, that kind of thing, so. It's a tedious process, very tedious process, so what they request, what they want us to document, they'll even question some things that they've approved on other projects, so it's crazy sometimes, but I guess any additional questions?
Yes. Questions?
On the board?
No, I really appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
okay, we do have,
I have one other question, at least. In one of the earlier slides, you were putting out the list of here's disaster planning that should be done by agencies such as ours. Looking forward to the next disaster that we're going to have, I'd like to hear what recommendations Aptum has for our district. What should we be doing other than what you've already seen from us as far as for our disaster plans and the rest of that? Don't need an answer now, but I'd like to think about that to give us guidance on where else we should be going.
it might be a good idea if, for example, you had an example of some other agency's disaster plan and we could see the level of detail that's required, things like that.
If ours isn't adequate.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
ours
do you
is.
have one now? My question.
Yeah.
Because I know the hazard mitigation plan, we're in the process of developing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to have that to get hazard mitigation dollars.
Right.
So either you have to adopt the counties or have your own, right?
Right. Okay.
So in addition to that, what the push is now to have pre-position contracts with, say, a debris contractor, if you don't do it in-house. Or have that plan for your personnel, say what your response is gonna be if you do have like fallen trees on pipelines or something. Identifying those things ahead of time is a big push. as well as like, who your response people are, those type of things. Where you're gonna get these resources from, your mutual aid, if you do that. I know that electric co-ops do that more than the water districts, but yeah, I can certainly put together some things for you to look at.
I'd like the one-page summary of that written so that we as a board could see it, but then also as a sort of a follow-up to staff.
Yeah.
And so that we could be communicating with them a year from now for, okay, where are we on developing the hazard, as Chris pointed out, the hazard mitigation plan, or whatever else you're recommending. So, yeah.
That hazard mitigation plan will drive some of that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I'm not looking for the
No,
answer now, but
yeah.
Bring that,
I'll get your information.
bring that back too.
And we'll
Yeah.
we can have a separate discussion about that as well.
Okay.
I think I'm here often enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, we can certainly present to the board later on.
Okay, we do have one comment or question from a member of the public online. Can we put Karen Batali on to,
Acknowledge her.
I'm sorry?
Just acknowledge that she wants to talk.
Hello,
Yes.
this is Karen Vitale. From Forest Springs, I did have a question. And that is, there's, as a member of the public, I don't know a whole lot about the FEMA funding and all of how the mechanisms work, but we hear a lot of top line headlines in the news that talk about there not being money for FEMA and FEMA money's running out and the federal budget hasn't been approved and there's continuing resolutions. So there's a lot of politics we hear about. And I wondered if you could just briefly explain whether once funding is obligated, does it live in a different bucket already? And these political machinations have no impact on it? Or do the current politics mean that FEMA doesn't actually have money to pay the district for its projects?
Yeah, so from time to time, we've seen it a lot more recently. Either the government shutdowns or the funding holds. So what they do is they'll ask all the applicants how much money they anticipate needing in reimbursement for the next quarter. So you'll send back, say we're going to ask for $200,000. So what they'll do is they'll set that money aside, and all the other available funding they'll push towards something that's something's going to happen. So they do put the money on hold. They don't freeze everything, but like I said, they actually put feelers out. And they request how much we're going to need in the next quarter, or 6 months, whatever that they anticipate the stand down is, or the lack of funding to go towards other things. So that's my understanding of it and how they've spoken to us in the past 2 years that's happened. So does that clarify your question?
I think so. So basically they're managing it quarter by quarter and they've got a bucket of money for what they expect to need to pay out this quarter somewhere. They're not I recall that, after the hurricanes in Florida, they were talking about paying only emergencies and that other obligations weren't getting paid. And I was wondering if that includes their obligations to this district.
That's what they do currently. They normally they won't stop paying, but they like go take it period to period. So quarterly we have to so on the PA quarterly reports we have to put an anticipated dollar. They always track it, and sometimes, like I said, they'll put an additional feeler out there asking how much we're going to need for sure as it gets closer.
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more member of the public online. Nicole? Are you?
Am I, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I just wanted to say, I think the obligated monies that are, the grant funds that have been obligated or set aside with Cal OES, when you talk about Florida, it's the A and B, which is debris cleanup and the emergency. That's a part of the FEMA budget initially to respond quickly. And then each of the counties or states put forth to the federal government what they estimate the overall disaster for permanent work to cost. And that's where you have to go and get that budget amendment to happen at the federal level in order for that money to become available. I had a question in regards to your reporting. When you talk about the obligated, are you talking from the federal share perspective, or does SLV get any assistance from the state? I know that when you're looking at the 75-25 as their standard cost share, the state of California comes in and does part of that cost share that the recipient would have. Is so what number is that obligated? Is it just the federal share that you're showing in your slide?
That is the total amount of 100%. So I didn't break it down on this particular presentation what the federal and applicant cost share is, and it depended on what year, what Cal OES did. 2017, it was like 18.4%. More releases like 6.25%, so or 9%. So it changes from year to year depending on the severity of the disasters. So
Yeah, if you could add that detail. I know there's a need to have a high level presentation, but when you get to your detail, it would be nice for the public to understand what actually SLV is responsible for their cost share, versus federal and any state assistance that happens.
yeah, we've already done that on our we've already broken it out on the finance committee dashboard, so you'll see that information come out in the future.
Okay. And then on the way that you presented the projects, it would be interesting to see whether a project is complete from the SLV perspective and truly is just waiting for reimbursement, or that if it's a partial job, to understand where those projects lie. Because it looks like you're giving the status that's on the grant portal, but it's hard for me to tell because I'm looking through the phone, but I'm interested in seeing the more detailed report. So thank you for
that information previously on this, and it kind of cluttered up the slide. So I took it off. We're going to put it on the more detailed report.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I see no other hands up in the room and no one online. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on, unfinished business. The Valley Gardens mitigation credit.
And I was presenting that today. Yeah. So should I wait for Brian or should we go ahead? Good. Okay. So this item will be for the agreement for offsite mitigation for ropes and homes at our Olympia watershed property. This was previously brought to the board at the July 18th, 2024 meeting. And the basics of this agreement would be that we would provide approximately 10.5 acres of mitigation credits at $5.20 per square foot. And this would be for up to 15 acres, depending on what the Fish and Wildlife Service determines is necessary. And in terms of like the costs, I'm going to pull up a little table here just to help explain it a little more clearly. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. But yeah, so basically this is just showing the cost to the district here for if we don't have an agreement with Robeson or if we do. So if we don't have an agreement, we will be mitigating 40 acres. That's happening regardless of whether we have an agreement with them or not. And that will cost us $3.05 million. So if we don't have an agreement with them, we mitigate 40 acres for $3.05 million. Now, if we have an agreement with them, we mitigate more acres. So that's protecting and restoring more of our property. And the costs go up because we add 10.5 acres. So we add like $750,000 in management costs. But we receive compensation from Robeson in the neighborhood of $2.4 million. And so our total cost for the whole project comes down to 1.42 million. And so the savings overall between us doing it on our own and us doing it through this agreement with Robeson is 1.63 million, which is like 53% savings if we do it through Robeson, and we would protect more land. Yeah. Let me see what else I got. And I also wanted to address one error that was in the memo. I said that we had changed the pro rata share to 26%. However, it is still 22%. And then I also wanted to add that we have Jody McGraw, who was our consultant on this project, on the line in case there's any questions that come up that she might be better to answer. But yeah, with that, I will go ahead and take any questions.
Okay. Board members?
Yes.
Mark?
On page 15, agreement, the agreement item B, is Robson purchasing 10.5 acres from Zayante Hills also, or is that 10.5 for area that you're building on?
It's my understanding that they are purchasing 10 or 10.5 acres from the conservation bank, as well as this 10.5 that they will be needing.
Okay.
Paul Burrows, Annie Sandhills Conservation Bank. We do have a contract with Robeson for 10.5 acres.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If the district allocates up to the 15 acres to Robson Homes, plus the 40 that we're developing, what does that leave us in available non-conserved area in the event that 5 years from now we need to conserve other future projects that we don't have on the books right now?
Right. And I want to clarify that we are not developing. This is being protected and restored. Just you had said that.
Right.
But yeah, so we have 95 acres of Sandhills habitat within the Olympia watershed property.
Right.
And we've estimated with Jody that there's maybe like 80 to 85 that would be suitable for this type of mitigation. So even if we were to go to 55 total acres, if they do need the full 15, we still have a good bank of area to mitigate.
Good. Okay. Can we complete the work for the expanded habitat within the 18 months I see described on page 16, given the required Fish and Wildlife review approval process? Because it seems like we're setting up a target for ourselves that's at 18 months. But it requires agency approval, which we can't control.
Yes. We would certainly hope that we could get it done within 18 months. However, if it doesn't get done within the 18 months, it says that it would trigger a payment. However, that payment would go towards the total cost of the project. So if the project were to move forward, it would not change anything. It would just be like an early payment towards it.
Okay. Do we have a sense whether from Jody is 18 months in the approval?
Jody, do you want to answer that?
I can only say that it's really there's no statutory timeline obviously that kind of permitting. So it is sort of up to the participants in the agreement to do the planning and get it worked through the system. I think the 18 months is reasonable. And so, you know, with every administration, obviously these timelines change.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And can also on page 16, can Robson extend beyond the 18 months if needed, if the district needs to extend, do we have a sense whether that impacts their project?
I believe I have not spoken with them.
Okay,
I can speak on behalf of Robeson.
please.
So at this point, because we have the 10.5 acres from Paulboro, we can proceed, given that we get our permit through US Fish and Wildlife.
Right.
In case there is a delay on the additional 10 acres
Okay.
from your end. But there is also embedded in the contract the ability to create an 8-month extension.
Understand. Okay. Okay. But you need their 10.5 acres and the 10.5 acres from.
Yeah,
our
it would
district.
come down to you, to Fish and Wildlife if they came back to us and said, because it hasn't been resolved with you guys that we can't start any construction.
Right.
I don't know if that would be the case. That's a better question for Jody, probably.
I hope that we're early enough in your development process that that's not an issue to you. Okay. All right. Those are the questions I have. Thank you.
May I also comment, Jack Robeson, Robeson's brother? Within the agreement, it allows for an extension by us at our election with the payment, but in the event it's not approved yet, it doesn't prevent the contract from continuing to extend.
Right. Okay.
It doesn't expire. We wouldn't be obligated to make a payment, but as the agreement is written,
yes,
we are reimbursing payments for efforts being made to get it approved.
Yes, I see that. Good. Okay. Thank you. That's questions I have.
Yeah, I have some questions, probably for Chris and also for maybe the people in attendance as well. There was as I was reading through the existing easement that we have, it looked like it was specific for the probation tank. Have we done any other mitigation beyond the probation tank on that property?
Yes, we have done mitigation with PG&E. It's a little like former kind of pond looking area. It's a smaller area, but we have done mitigation with them. Are there any additional sites that we've done within there, Jody?
Was it done under the same easement agreement, same property?
Not the exact same property. It was on our same Olympia watershed property, but not done under the same easement, I don't believe.
So it was there was a separate easement for that. Okay.
Just to clarify real quick, in case you were asking, it was the probation tank, the Lewis tank, as well as the Quail Hollow pipeline have all been mitigated through that property that you were referring to.
Does the agreement allow us to do that? It looked like it was specific around probation.
Yeah, no, it does. It was basically a 6.7 acre set aside that was established initially to cover the probation tank project, but that was only requiring a little under an acre. And so we worked with the Fish and Wildlife Service to set aside a much larger area so that you would have additional mitigation in advance for other projects.
There was also a line in that document talking about low effect reporting. Now, I'm not into the environmental details in this, but is there a different kind of reporting if we do this larger deal with a private sector company?
That would be something I'd redirect to Jody.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the low effect HCP, which is a special designation for a habitat conservation plan. That term low effect refers to the impact of the project, and that's sort of something that's determined by the Fish and Wildlife Service. They have indicated at this time that both the Robeson Homes HCP and the district's HCP are low effect HCPs. So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
So there wouldn't be any significant increase in reporting requirements to Fish and Wildlife or to the Land Trust or anybody else?
Yeah, the reporting requirements associated with the HCP with the mitigation would go up, and that is what was accounted for, as Chris mentioned, in the financial initial planning estimate. Initial planning estimates for the cost for the management do include additional costs for for reporting on the larger size of the conservation area, but that's sort of independent of whether it's a low effect HCP or regular HCP.
Is the reporting requirements the same regardless of whether it's 40 acres or 55? Does that matter?
Yeah, no, so your management reporting could be, slightly more, obviously doesn't scale linearly, but there could be additional management that's done on that additional 10 acres. So we did assume that the reporting would be more costly and factored that into the estimated costs for the combined mitigation option.
Okay. This might be a question for Zianti, but are you guys pursuing additional area that you could offer Robson under the existing contract that you have with?
Yes, we have recently signed an agreement with Olympia Quarry and have started the process of a new conservation bank with an additional 40 acres. And the difference is, since we already have an existing conservation bank, all of our documentation is an extension of that. So we'll definitely be ready to go within the next year, according to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I specifically asked them, I think it's your question, Bob, what other regulation will the district have if they sell credits to a private party? And I was told by U.S. Fish and Wildlife that you would have to do the same thing on those 10.5 acres as the conservation bank would have to do to become a conservation bank. So there's a lot more paperwork that you have to do other than just your typical easement that you're used to doing now in HCP. And I don't know if Jody has that encompassed in the documentation or not.
It didn't jump out at me in the material that we have in the agenda, but when I was reading through it, dealing with federal government is a weird and wonderful thing. And, requirement can change based on doing X versus doing Y. And I am a little bit concerned about that relative to our, relative to doing this particular deal. I mean, let's be really clear here. The agreement as written does not commit irrevocably Robson to actually executing on this 10.5 acres. They can back out at any time. And if Zianti has land available at a lower price, we become more of a backup, I guess, or a second position or insurance in case something goes sideways with Zianti.
I'd like to add that I first came to the district in January 2023 to Carly Blanchard and wrote a proposal to work hand in hand with the district. And several board members have told me that they never heard about it. Basically, our agreement with Olympia is they give us the land free. We manage it. We get a 10% off the top and everything else is 50-50. And what we proposed to the water district is we would manage your land and you would have, say it's 40 acres. We would have 20 acres, say, like for you guys to use over the next 20 or 30 years. We would manage the entire 40 and basically you guys just have your credits and pretty much we take care of the rest. But we never got a response. I spoke to Carly once and she said she would get back to me. I sent some emails to Bob and tried to follow up with her and never heard anything. So I know some of you are hearing this for the first time.
Yes. Could I request that you follow up with Chris Clyer there?
Sure.
He's performing most of the functions that Carly was performing in that regard. So Chris, if you would follow up with him and
kind of a separate topic, obviously, but doing business with people whose full function is doing this kind of thing, as opposed to our mission being a little bit different, might be a worthwhile thing to explore.
Yes.
Anyway,
I will note that we have developed this proposal in conjunction with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so all reporting requirements, anything that goes along with it has been included as we understand it. Jody has done quite a bit of this kind of work and has worked closely with us to develop this. So we believe that we have this all kind of mapped out, and we believe it's a win-win-win. Robeson gets their mitigation credit. We get protected and restored more of our land, and we get savings of like $1.7 million.
Point taken.
Pretty good deal.
But the contract is still the way that it is. The contract is written in a way that allows, no offense to Robson, I mean, we're just doing business here, but it allows them to back out at any time. There is no guarantee, none, zero, nada, of any money from Robson other than the 7,500 and a 22%, cost share. That's it.
Well, then we could edit our habitat conservation plan to remove their acres.
Well,
and all of our costs are covered.
Okay, so that I want to get into explore that a little bit. So let's say we go down this path of getting 50.5 acres set aside. Let's say we've got it approved, but it took a little bit longer. Zianti came in with a better price and better schedule. Robson decides to go with Zianti's new conservation easement. They back out of ours. Are we able to, at that point, go to Fish and Wildlife and say, hey, we want to go back to the 40 acres. We don't want to do the 50.5 and incur the additional finance associated with that?
I'll refer that to Jody. Jody, do you have some input on when in the agreement we're actually kind of like obligated, I guess?
Yeah, I think it would be at the time, usually it's all done towards the end of the process where you would convey an easement, which would permanently protect the land. At that point, obviously, you'd want to know if it's 40 or 50.5 acres. So I do think, my understanding of this agreement is that was the first step that was required to start the process of planning the mutual mitigation out there. And so just getting this up and running was going to enable Robeson Homes and the district work together to work out the details with the Fish and Wildlife Service. But it's obviously, as you said, not binding on anyone, but until we get the agreement going forward, there's no way to start working on it. So, but yeah.
I understand that. I just want everybody here to be in a transparent fashion, to be very cognizant of what we're talking about here. This is not a commitment. The difference between commitment and involvement is at breakfast, right? The pigs committed the eggs, and the eggs involved, or the chickens involved. Yeah. So we have a little bit of that going on. Okay, so it sounds like before we execute the easement with the land trust of Santa Cruz, that's the time at which we would decide 50 or 40. But at that point, we're committed. And if we say 50.5 and Robson backs out after that, we're committed at 50.5 and the finance is associated with that. Okay. So that is there's some risk here, guys. This is not a for sure slam dunk thing. Yeah, and Jody, by the way, I appreciate the fact you seem to be involved in all aspects of this. So that kind of perspective, I think, allows us to hopefully get to that level of transparency.
Comment. I just wanted to say the reason we're all involved in this is U.S. Fish and Wildlife put both Robeson and the Conservation Bank between a rock and a hard place in 2023 when they said nationwide we're changing all the ratio from 1 to 1 to 3. Whoa. So now everybody has to sell 3 times the amount. That's what they did.
Whoa.
And what happened with Robeson Homes is their HCP is 2 to 1. So originally, when I talked to Mark many 4 or 5 years ago, we were fine. We had a proposal. Here we go. We need 10.5 acres. No problem. We're all good. In 2023, the service says, okay, now you need 21 acres. And we're not going to let the Conservation Bank sell all of them because we need the Conservation Bank to retain some of their acreage so you don't sell out. So we were approved in 2006. Prior to 2006, the only way anybody could mitigate for a project is to buy land and set it aside. Before 2006, only one person did an HCP and did that. So basically, what Robeson Homes was told to do is go back to 2006 and find some land.
Oh, jeez.
And,
Oh, my God.
and, you know, look, Mark's a smart guy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
he
crazy.
figured out you guys had some land.
Yeah.
And for us, we had to go out and find land as well to make our conservation bank bigger. Otherwise, you know, we're out of the picture too.
Well, I mean, you're in the business of
We're
doing
in the
this, right?
business.
So you want to continue to expand so you can support these activities, right?
So our first step was to try to partner with you guys, and that didn't work, so we went to Olympia Park. And that took us, I don't know, 9 months of back and forth. And, you know, so now we're headed down that path. So just so you know, that's where we're at, totally transparent.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, you would be able to offer Robson when you get this approved, 10.5 acres.
Last week, we got our agreement.
Yeah.
That's when we got in touch, sent our paperwork to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And also the county, I don't know if you guys have your county portion in here, but the county's definitely involved if you're selling anything. So you have to go through the whole county process as well.
There's VIGs on top of VIGs. Okay, got it.
Mr. Polk, if I may, I think I'm hearing a lot of components of a varying degree of importance here relative to the transaction and concern relative to our obligations of filling them. The cost for these per foot being $5 and change square foot, and the concern that we'd go get a better price somewhere else. You know, I think that was why after our summer meeting, we went back and revised the contract to commit us to a payment, you know, progress payment, so to speak, reimbursement to those pursued costs. And as we get further along in the process, those costs will add up, both for you and for us. And the value to mitigate your concern of finding a better price diminishes significantly. I mean, if we're pursuing this with you and reimbursing you, those are dollars that are gone. Because the way the contract's written is if we back out, you keep those dollars. We don't get those back. So without numbers, because I'm not that intimate to it, the concern of getting a discount really gets diminished because of how this contract is now written. So we're hoping that fulfills that. Now, the other thing I'm hearing too is a concern about needing more credits in the future, maybe not, and us taking them from you, so to speak, and needing more. So in theory, what I'm hearing is there's a need for more of these. The worst case scenario is we don't buy it and you have credits that you likely are going to need, possibly. But there's also the reality that we own that property and plan to develop it because we're developers. And although a project hasn't been approved, you know, we're not in the business of owning just that dirt out there. It's a cost to us. So we're very much interested in getting this transaction completed and making sure we mitigate the concerns. And I think the contract, the way it's written now, should suffice to cover that and bring both parties successfully to the finish line.
I want to be really clear. Sorry, I'm still on that thing. I want to be really clear. Appreciate the fact you're covering part of our costs. No question about it. Those costs will be in the order of tens of thousands, maybe 50,000, maybe 75,000. 44,000 square feet times 10.5 acres times about what, 90 cents is going to come out to about $400,000. So, and I mean, I look at this strictly as a business transaction. We're going to get some of our costs covered for a larger portion, which we may or may not need. You're getting insurance because you now have somebody who's going to be working on this, but you've got multiple suppliers here. And you can always, at any time, according to the contract, back out and go with somebody else if you wish. All I want is to make sure that we all acknowledge that that is an option that you have. I'm not angry about it. I'm not upset about it. I get where we are. But we have to recognize that Zion's in this business too. And in fact, this is their primary business, not us, which is more of a supporting for our activities for doing our projects, right? So that's it.
I think I can, stepping back and looking at broader economics of that, I see the concern relative to about $350,000, cost. And if we are going to be pursuing this with Fish and Wildlife, which, could take a reasonable amount of time, the idea of us getting down this road and then trying to save $350,000, or, I mean, it's $5 a foot. If it's $4 a foot, $1 a foot times 43,560 is $40,000 an acre. Times 10, 400,000, right? Am I really going to save $400,000 to start this process over when we've got over tens of millions of dollars invested in a project that we want to start? The cost of my capital over there far outweighs the benefit of doing that.
That's great to hear. And I'm certainly looking forward to getting that check in the future. But just pardon me, because the contract's not written in a we're committed. So that's all. If the contract were written a little bit different, I'd have a little bit of a different comment on it. I get that you might not want to be spending your time on two parallel efforts, but you already have a contract for part of that already. And so adding to that, from my perspective, would be reasonably easy for you to do. Anyway, I think I might have one more question.
Okay, 1 second though. Francis, you've come off mute if you'd like to mute yourself, please.
Thank you.
Let me see if I have one more question here. I think I'm good. Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate the back and forth and the transparency. It's really great to have that conversation.
Yeah, well, I really see this as an environmental and financial win for this, and I think it's a no-brainer. And I'm really appreciative to Carly and Jody, who originally started this, and then Chris, who you finished this up and really helped this. So I really urge the board to not delay this any further and vote yes on this.
So I would like to make one comment, and that is that property is valuable property. And even if Robeson Homes decided to back out and say, we're not going to build on it, that property is going to get developed. It's too valuable. It's too important to the city of Scotts Valley. And whoever buys it from you, if you guys disappeared tomorrow, whoever else gets it is still going to have to get a conservation easement. And so, I don't see you guys going away on this. I see you, it's too valuable a deal at this point to walk away from or to do something strange with. But even if you did, somebody else will buy that property and develop it. There's no doubt. So,
If I may.
Yes.
I would just also like to say that this is a fantastic opportunity for the Water District. Having a cost share partner on the development of the regulatory documentation and authorizations is a windfall, and being able to monetize 10 acres of pristine sandhills habitat, keeping it in that condition where it recharges groundwater and supports endangered species and generates potentially millions of dollars for the district is manna from heaven. It's a good deal, and so for the district ratepayers, it's a great deal, and for the watershed, it's a great deal. And there's no reason I see to delay further. All of the elements that troubled me in when we saw this over the summer are fully addressed, and I think we should proceed.
okay. So the recommended motion, the board authorizes.
Public comment. Public comment.
Do we have other comments from the public?
Yes, please.
Please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rick Moran. I'm from Bidwell. When this project was first presented, I suggested that the district's financial compensation be adjusted to reflect rising costs. While the rate has been adjusted upward, it is still below market price. The money, around $2 million, comes from federal and state requirements on developers to deal with the cost of destroying habitat for endangered species. The Valley Gardens project will destroy about 10 acres of sensitive sandhills habitat. The money is not some sort of windfall. The money is meant to preserve and to restore habitat to ensure the survival of endangered species. The developers have already have an agreement with Zianti Sandhills Conservation Bank for 10 acres and sought out the water district because Zianti didn't have enough available acres. Well, Zianti, as you've heard, Zianti is in the process and has acquired more acres. What I'm concerned with is that the water district is being used as a safety net that if Zianti comes through with more acres, and we will be dropped. The agreement allows Rob Robeson the right to terminate at any time with just a written notice. Terminate at any time with just a written notice. The water district should require that if the developer drops our use and goes to another conservation bank, that they will pay a sizable penalty. You guys can figure that out, but sizable to deter them from doing that. A sizable fee to offset the valuable time and effort our staff will go through to complete this project. And while someone said this will diminish, but it will not eliminate the risk that we're going to go through with the developers being able to terminate at any time with just a written notice. No explanation, just a written notice. Secondly, I have a question. The water district has used the land trust of Santa Cruz County as the grantee in the deed of conservation in the past. Now, if the district is going to do that again, I would like to know if Director Largay, with his connection to the land trust, should recuse himself from this agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would be happy to address that. I consulted District Attorney Christina Pritchard in that regard. She wrote, after reviewing the item, there does not appear to be any consideration before the board this evening for action which would form a relationship between the district and the land trust or that would financially benefit the land trust. Therefore, you do not have any conflict of interest and may discuss and vote on the item. So I'm comfortable with that.
That's the advice of our legal counsel.
But I'm following the advice of our counsel.
So my understanding of the conflict of interest is not that there actually be a conflict of interest, but there be the appearance of a conflict of interest. So that's my point. I have a concern about the conflict, the appearance of the conflict with Mr. Director Largay's involvement with the land trust and the water districts involved with the land trust in this issue. Thank you.
Okay, so we have addressed that with our legal counsel.
Yeah, thank you. And then you made a couple other comments. One had to do with the environmental damage associated with the project and the importance of protecting land. Just to be clear, the San Lorenzo Valley Water District, if it wanted to, could sell Olympia watershed property. And those lands could be the subject of the next housing development proposal. And those sandhills could be damaged. What the easements created through mechanisms such as this does is prevents that from ever happening. So that land is protected in perpetuity. And that is the value added through the payment into the banking instrument. Protection of these habitats is of great importance. And the whole approach here is to prevent some future board of directors and water district from choosing to develop these lands and keep them in that condition forever. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further comments online. I see Director Pulse.
Yeah, I think one of the things about conflict of interest is that it just be explicitly addressed in a transparent fashion in the open. So even if it had been checked with the attorney, being able to discuss and disclose it here during the board meeting, I think is appropriate. I mean, I think you guys know every time the Highland tank comes up, I always say I'm directly across from it. And that's just to make sure that everybody knows that I have this issue here, but I have also checked on that, right? So, but it's the disclosure of it proactively in the meeting that's the important part. I can go ahead and make a motion.
Yes, please.
The board authorizes the interim, I move that the board authorizes the interim general manager to execute an agreement with Robson Homes to provide off-site sand hills mitigation, period. I don't know that we need the rest of the detail that's in there. It's all contained in the agreement. And in fact, the 10.5 acres part, there's some question about that anyway. So I think I'd rather just move that the agreement stand on its own and that we authorize the general manager to execute it.
I'll second that.
Any further comment on that motion as stated? Seeing none, will the secretary call the roll?
Yes. President Hill,
Yes.
Vice President Smalley,
Yes.
Director Folk,
Yes.
Director Lane,
Yes.
Director Largay.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is election of officers. The board will elect a president and vice president for 2025. And it's my understanding from the agenda as it was the details that the office changes after the vote.
Sorry, the office changes.
After the vote.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So do we have nominations for president of the board?
Don't look too excited, Jeff.
And I'm going to be General Sherman and say that if nominated, I will not run, and if elected, I will not serve. I've done my job this year.
I would like to nominate Mark Smalley as president board if you would accept.
Yes, I will.
I would second that nomination.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
shall we vote on that?
Well, we should hear.
Yes.
Any comments?
Comments.
Right.
Comments from the public? Comments online? Nope.
So we have none. All right. You ready to take a vote?
Call the vote?
President Hill,
Yes.
Vice President Smalley,
Yes.
Director Foltz,
Yes.
Director Lang,
Yes.
Director Largay.
Yes.
All right. That's it. All right. That's for you. Just like deja vu for you.
It's been a long year.
You did a great job. Thank you
Yes,
so
it's
much.
Both
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
issues for the district and also family issues that I don't need to discuss.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Now you
Well, yes, I'd like to nominate Alina Lang to be vice president of the board.
I will second that.
Since you asked me that question before, I have to ask you that question now. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Comments from the public on this? Seeing none here in the room. Seeing none online. Jen, will you take the vote?
All right. If I can get this right here.
It's okay if you just call us by name, I think at this point, since it's,
President Smalley.
yes.
Okay. Vice President Lang.
Yes.
She's not quite vice.
Not
Right.
yet.
All right, there we go. Okay, Director Lang, and then we got Director Hill,
Yes,
Director Holt,
Yes.
and Director Largay.
Yes.
All right. Pass.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Hopefully you get what you asked for.
Be careful.
Yeah, right. Okay, moving on to committee assignments. In the past, my recollection has been that we do this at a subsequent meeting after electing officers. But I see that these are both grouped in the same.
I believe board policy says that it can be at the last meeting of this year or a subsequent meeting.
Right. But
This was the way it was done last year, so we just.
right, okay, since it's on the agenda then, we'll proceed with that. I do want to make the comment though, before I make suggestions on board members, that we do have, in addition to the 3 committees that we have listed here, we have the Santa Margarita Groundwater Association, where we need to appoint 2 directors and an alternate too also. However, that's not on our agenda this evening, so we can't talk about that. We'll talk about that aspect at a subsequent meeting. For the admin committee, I'd like to propose Bob and Jeff. For the budget and finance committee, I'd like to propose Jeff and Brian. For the engineering and environmental committee, Alina and me. So,
Yeah, I decline on the admin. So I've served the admin like 40 years plus, and I'd rather not serve on. I'd rather serve on a different committee.
okay, I'd like to hear any comments from other board members also to the suggestions that I have.
I really like how you laid that out. I think it's a very good plan of who you picked.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the admin committee at this point? Or this is.
I put out 6, 3 different committees, 6 names. My suggestion was Bob and Jeff on admin, Jeff and Brian on budget and finance, engineering and environmental, me and Elena.
So, Mark, if I may, in the past, up until recently, the only way a board member could say no to an assignment is if the board vote was taken and declined.
Yes.
However, there was a precedent set, and President Hill said it, where Director Largay was going to be appointed to the admin committee, and he declined.
Right.
And so he was rewarded without no vote, but rewarded with a different committee assignment.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've made that precedent,
right,
I am exercising that under mine as well.
Understand.
So, I mean, there needs to be equal treatment and equal.
Yeah, right, and I understand.
Right.
That's your comment. Okay, but I am seeking comment from other board members. I haven't heard from them. Jeff,
I'm happy with the 2 you have me assigned to. And
okay.
I'm happy serving on budget and finance and Santa Margarita.
We're not discussing Santa Margarita. That's it. This evening.
It's not on the agenda, so it's a subsequent meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, given that, I don't know that we need 2 board members. Bob, if
The admin committee isn't real busy.
So the other thing here is, are we actually going to use the committees this year? Or next year? Because this past year, we hardly ever used the committees. The admin committee never met, as far as I can tell. It is not a good use of time here. And by the way, we still need to deal with a precedent. So Are we now saying that the precedent is no longer going to be adhered to where a board member can say, you know, we decline? And please put me on another committee and to have that request accommodated.
I understand your comment. I don't agree with.
Okay, but in terms of the
wasn't-
meeting,
it wasn't in the rule. But you asked a slightly different question.
yeah, that is.
Are the committees going to be utilized?
I mean, because look, from my point of view, the committees are worthwhile from the point of view of having community involvement.
Mhm.
But if they're going to either not meet, let's say, waste of time for our community, and it's also a waste of time for the board members.
Right. So,
Right, because at that point in time, you have no involvement in any.
so the engineering and environment has been meeting regularly.
Well, I get that, and you know, I mean, my expertise area is, of course, in finance, and it's the one that I actually never get to serve on except last year. I'm. It is a unique thing. Being put in a committee that never meet is actually it's like, what are you doing? Given the
let me comment on one aspect and ask our current interim general manager. Do you see utilizing the committees to a level to address Bob's question? Because in particular for the admin committee, I do see one significant thing that needs to be addressed. And you brought it up. So I think that that's a focus for what
did I bring out?
But let me ask John first, and then I'll come back to your question for my thought on that.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you know, we have to establish or reestablish with especially the admin committee, its purpose and, you know, the reason for meeting. Because I think the last thing somebody wants to do is go to a meeting and it has no purpose.
Exactly.
And so I think it's fundamental that we just go back to look at what was the original design, what was the original purpose, and to make sure that that committee still addresses that need. Is that need still there? And if it does, then then we need to meet. Not going to say we need to meet every month, but obviously, I think you need to meet more than obviously what has been. But again, I just think it's the idea, and Director Foltz hit on it too. It's your one area where your community actually gets involved with the board. So I think in that sense, it's important. So I think there's a different need here and feel here. So I think we'll be meeting more because I think there's going to be some different direction coming out of that committee.
Okay. So that was the first part of my. To your other point, well, what did you bring up? Consolidations. You pointed out to us, we don't have a policy procedure for how to go about that. So that's one aspect that I see we need, because you prompted my thoughts on that. We don't have it. Where should that be developed?
Well, I mean, is it developed there? I mean, there's been a real shift in where things take place to where the admin committee has basically been stripped of any of its responsibilities over the last few years. And more of that is either moved to engineering, environmental. Time we had separate committees or budget.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, I still go back to so we got a one-off of one director, but another one. Okay. Let's accept that for a minute, that there are people here who get treated differently. If I benefits. Beyond that, if we can come up with, and maybe this is another reason to delay it, come up with what is the scope of work going to be for these committees, to be able to look at it and say, is there any value to having, and are the assignments actually going to be made? Okay, then we can take another look at that.
So let me ask the question then. Are you willing to meet with John and Jeff to strategize on that for admin aspects.
But again, if you look at the policy,
not-
no, wait a second. If you look,
the committee, but just.
wait a minute. If you look at the policy, the tasks are to be assigned by the board. It makes absolutely no sense for Jeff and I and John to get together and talk about things if that is not being explicitly agreed to by the board. Because otherwise, we just need to follow the policy.
So I think what he wants us to do is come up with a proposal that the board would or would not agree with.
Okay, so are we saying that we want to create an ad hoc committee prior to the admin committee formulation to put together what, okay. So
That's where I'm going.
Okay, so that is not on the agenda for today.
I understand that.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
Yes. Yes. But I still asked you the question. And I understand, maybe I can't talk about that since it's not on the agenda.
That's right.
But you're giving, I think, good need the good thought on that. So.
Well, look, I appreciate the kind words and all the rest of it.
But you prompted me to be thinking. You gave me the assignment on the consolidations, or you nominated me.
Okay,
to follow.
are you saying then that you no longer want to be the consolidation person?
I do. What I see, I think we could talk about this aspect for a while, but neither of what we're talking about is here on the agenda.
Right.
Agreed?
Right.
Okay. So what we do have on the agenda, though, are the names that I put forth.
Mark, if I could just circle back, in terms of special treatment, I was asked to serve on a committee. I declined. I then served on no committee. And so I did not, it was misrepresented that I got something I did want. I was placed on no committee. To this date, I have not served on a committee. And I would propose that if that's your preference, Bob, perhaps you serve on no committee.
As long as we've got equal treatment, I mean, as far as I know, that's what you wanted. So whatever.
So, but what we have in front of us are the names I suggested.
I'm not prepared to accept.
I understand
tonight.
Okay.
So we can vote.
I think we can.
I'm not prepared to accept.
So for the admin committee, then at this point, Jeff.
I'm also available to take on additional work if you need to put me in place.
Okay. Then if you're volunteering for that for the moment, then Alina and Jeff. Okay. So
I'll be happy to serve on the engineering committee. If Alina, I mean,
I'd like to stay on the E&E.
Basically, we're talking here about everybody getting an assignment. I'm happy to serve on the engineering committee. I've done that in the past.
I think the president has assigned.
I made my preferences known. And I understand your comment, Bob.
Okay.
But everybody else has agreed with the suggestion. So resolved then for the admin committee. At this point, it's Alina and Jeff. Budget and finance, Jeff and Brian. Engineering and environmental, Alina and me. So, Jen? I guess we need to have take public comments on this. I see none here in the room. Please, could you come up to the mic and.
I'm named Mount Garcia, Bull Creek. Why don't you guys let him try another different community? I mean, if you're willing to take another spot, why not switch places? I kind of like his insight. He feels like he could achieve on something else. Why have him do something that he's done for quite some time and it's someone else's turn? That's my suggestion. I know it's not too much, but I agree with Bob.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the comment. I see, no other comments online.
Do I need a motion?
Oh,
I'd like to
sure.
move that the board president make recommendations to appoint the board of directors to committees as per the board policy manual.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, let's vote. President Smallings,
Yes.
Vice President Lane,
Yes.
Director Foltz,
Abstain.
Director Hill,
Yes.
Director Largay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. It passed.
Okay. Moving on then. The next are for committee appointments for public applicants. We have 16 or 17.
Well, one.
17 started, one pulled out, so we have 16. I do want to comment, this is more than I have experienced as a board member. And I'm pleased to see the number of public that are interested in this. Given that in past years, since we've not had this number, we haven't had to go through and make selection. So I have two thoughts on how to select 3 members from the public for each of the committees. My first suggestion is for us to have board members look at the list, select 3 individuals for each of the committees, submit that to Jen over the next 2 weeks, and at our next meeting, Jen can provide us a list of here is who the board selected. That's one option. The other one is we do a simple show of hands this evening as we read through each of the names for the various committees. Thoughts on those suggestions?
So I do have a bit of a hard time with Mitchell, Williams, and Garcia since we didn't get any supplemental documentation. So I just want to note that it was very difficult to think about those 3 in particular.
I thought we had information on.
I thought we did, yeah.
On Garcia.
On Garcia, we did Mitchell and the other one, they just
No,
submitted
there were
an
3
application
that
form.
just
and that
filled
was
out
it.
the form and nothing
There was
else.
the application.
I couldn't find
Didn't Williams
Garcia.
provide additional
Oh, there's a
information?
form for Garcia. He just didn't.
He didn't. Yeah, but there's no
Excuse me. Williams did provide additional information in his email.
In the body of his email.
In the body of his email.
Right.
I know Alex Garcia, yeah, she's right. He was just an application form.
Yeah.
Did have some other comments about how to look at this. I mean,
Okay.
I think in terms of my,
yeah,
in terms of my priorities, it's people that are residents of the district, and I know there's one that isn't.
Right. That's actually in our policy manual. That's a requirement.
If not clear for committees, by the way, the admin committee can take that up.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. Number 2 is first choice. That is, if someone requested something like their first choice,
Right, give them the first choice. Right.
give them that. And number 3 is new faces. So I think with the number of people that we have, there are people that have served on committees in some cases for many, many years. It might be time to do a roll and start bringing new faces into the district as well. So that's sort of the way I would look at it. I mean, your suggestion about going off and submitting names, the only thing I would say is you probably then won't have a committee meeting in January, at least not until late. If we ratify it on the January 2nd.
we have a meeting currently scheduled January 2nd. If Jen or staff brought that compiled summary back to us January 2nd, that I think would afford time for staff to then go out, contact the three individuals and board members appropriate for those committees to possibly be targeting maybe the third week in January.
Possibly.
Possibly the third week in January or the fourth week.
I know it's been hard getting people for the first one. So.
It generally is, but that's my thought on
Sure. No,
on doing it that way, Jen.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. One other thing that I do want to comment, kind of in general to what Bob was saying. The committees, the public participation in the committee has been the way directors have often seen what the district is about, and the district seen what it's elected before being either appointed or elected. So I think that your point about potential and having new faces here, I'd like to think that new faces have the potential of being my replacement.
Yeah.
At some point down the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would encourage board members to be thinking of that.
No, good point.
So to this suggestion then, I don't know, table this or bring it back to the next one. I want to see.
Well, I like your idea in that case. So let's go ahead and submit the three we would choose and work on it in a second.
That'll get us down to a shorter list for each one, and maybe that some of them will all be agreeing on.
Right.
Since we had combined the E&E committee because of lack of applications, do you think maybe we should up that one since we got so many and so we accept more people into that?
So one other quick comment. There was another reason why they were combined, and that was that it was determined that every engineering project had an environmental component to it and vice versa, and that it didn't make sense to have the two committees.
Yes.
I think Alina's referring to the head count on it.
Right.
Maybe having more members.
And
yeah,
I heard the comment early in my tenure when the committees were larger than they are right now, that public members, in particular, I think this was related to when it was just a separate environmental committee, and it had quite a number of public members. Often staff had trouble getting a quorum because, well, I don't really need to be there today. So they were declining. So staff was encouraging, keep it at the three. Then you're getting more of a commitment from those three that are there.
I hear that. I almost feel like a 4, like an even number is better. So you have like 2 engineering, 2 environmental.
Four is a 2 and a 2, and our board policy manual currently says up to 3 public members. So
another item for the
you'd have to go back and change the policy manual before we can do that. So yeah, let me see.
I like the idea of submitting our recommendations, tallying those, and maybe we converge on a solution without having to go through the exhaustive list. Though I do want to hear from public comment. Hopefully some folks interested in serving are able to speak for themselves.
Yes. Okay. Bob?
Yeah, and keep in mind on the motion, each committee also has to have a membership number designated as part of the motion because we have a flexible policy around that.
The way I remember the board policy manual is up to 3.
Understand that, but what you have to do is you have to establish what the number is of committee members for the purposes of the motion.
Oh, okay.
So what we say is we nominate X, Y, and Z to the committee, and the committee size is 5. That's the motion.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, you aren't fulfilling what we need to do as part of our board policy manual. What we've done ever since 2018 when we changed it from one member of the community to a more flexible member.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, before, figure out what the motion's gonna be, do we have any comments from the public?
Jim Mosher is.
Well, we don't need to have a motion on your suggestion. That's just board's gonna do something. We're not actually taking any specific action around appointments.
Not appointing anybody.
No, we're not appointing anybody. We do have a recommended motion here that I guess we're not gonna act on, today. Okay, then I will restate, what I was suggesting after we hear any public comments, just so that we're clear on that.
So you have two hands up on line.
Right, I see them.
Two.
Anybody here at the meeting wish to address us here in the room? Please, could you come up to the mic?
I'm Cheryl Adams, and I applied to the administrative committee. So just wanted you to know that I am interested. I'm a hearing person. I believe in small community water districts, and I'm a very community-oriented person. I've been here since 2022. I'm a fire victim from another fire, so I'm here with knowledge of that and how my other water district had to deal with drilling. And it would be nice to know what you guys plan to do, because it was a little disturbing to talk about, hear you talk about eliminating committee, like an admin committee, and what's its purpose and all that stuff. As a member of the community, and as a potential helper for you from the community side, I just like better communication from you guys on what is, I read online what your committee was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Sounded right up my alley. So I thought maybe I have something to contribute. So I don't know, other than what I already wrote to you guys, I don't know what I can tell you about myself. So my question to you is there going to be an interview process? Or are you just going to paper screen us? What's the process here?
We will be reviewing the information that you've submitted to us. You're calling it a paper screening?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what
and with the opportunity at this meeting for.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you, I'm interested. I would love to be part of this. Like I said, I'm a community-oriented person. I'm already part of the community radio station here in town. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you mentioned you were interested in the admin committee.
Mhm.
Feel free to email me with any thoughts you have.
Okay. All right. Well,
I've got a contact form on the website.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. I really enjoyed reading your application, and it looked like you had a lot of administration experience. So
yeah, I worked for a state agency for most of my career, and so I managed budgets and contracts and staffing and hiring and firing and onboarding and training, statewide training, and worked collaboratively with other community agencies and other government agencies. So I do have, being an old folk rehab counselor, I have a lot of transferable skills to maybe contribute.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for coming in person.
Jeff, you made a suggestion about her emailing you information sort of directly. I think if we are going to ask for additional information, it goes to everybody through Jen.
Yeah.
They can submit it, and they submit it back to all board members.
Yeah, that's fine.
And there's a
Absolutely.
deadline at which they do that, so we can have information back to you in order to make the January 2nd meeting.
Absolutely.
That's the only way to handle this fairly.
Agreed. Yes. Okay. Anybody else here want to comment? If not, I will move to the.
There are 4 people
Yes,
online.
I'm
right?
watching. Yeah. Online, Jim Mosier, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can.
It's Jim Mosier from Felton, and I want to speak in favor of resplitting the environment and engineering committees. I agree with what many of you have said that it would be great to bring in more. We have a lot of, it seems, very talented and qualified people from the community who want to get involved, particularly those with engineering and environmental experience. And it would be a shame to not take advantage of that and also be able to bring new people into the process who bring talent and potentially can really contribute to the district. I don't think the argument that there's, every environmental project also has a engineering component and vice versa really holds water, because they also all have budgetary implications, but that doesn't mean we should then fold in the budget committee into one committee. They're really 2 very different sets of expertise. We have community members in both of these areas. I was very impressed with several of the paper applications. So I would suggest create more opportunities for people to get involved, especially when we have this, to me anyway, somewhat unexpected pool of good applicants who want to get involved. Let's find ways to get them involved. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Francis Cleveland, you have the floor.
Yes. So I'm Francis Cleveland, and I am an electrical engineer, but I work more in the power industry, including renewable energy. And so I've been consulting for umpteen years. So I am very interested in seeing how my expertise could help this group, and vice versa, in the sense that water and electricity are definitely different, but they have a lot of things in common as well. And so I am, again, I do tend to agree with splitting the engineering from the environment. Not that they're really separate, but the expertise of the people can be quite separate. So I do agree with the previous speaker on that. And I do believe that there are a number of us in this community that can help, particularly with the engineering side of things. So I would like to participate if I could. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mark Dolson.
Hi, thanks. So just very briefly, I want to applaud your decision to take the time for each director to be able to carefully assess the various applicants and form their own list. And I agree that the clearer that people can be about what their criteria are, the more helpful that would be. I think there's definitely merit in one of the suggestions that Bob made, which is to have a goal of including as many more new faces as possible. But I also want to counterbalance that by noting that there's also a benefit to having people with experience and institutional knowledge and continuity. And naturally, the reason I'm mentioning that is because I have a record of having been on the admin committee for a number of years, and I'm hoping to continue that. And I think it can be mutually advantageous for me to do that. Thanks.
Okay. I have a caller simply identified as iPhone 3. But I don't know who that is.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me?
We can.
I don't know why that's. I logged on my Apple ID. My name is Tim Mitchell. and I have never been involved with the water board, but I've lived here since 1988. And I raised my children here, and I coached and was involved in the community in a variety of sports at the local high school. And when they're growing up, and I just would like to get involved. I'd like to be one of those fresh faces. And I don't know what happened to my application because it sounds like there was some information that is missing, and I'd like to find out how I get you that information. I retired in 2023 after 40 years in the tech industry and driving up and down Highway 9. And I would like to get involved, and I'd like to help if I can. So,
okay, based on his comment, I'd ask Jen, could you follow up with him? Because I think he, what I have in my notes is there's no information other than a one page.
Just the application.
Just the application. If you could follow up with him.
That's
He
all
does
I have
have
is the application
something
form.
that he submitted that just got lost in the email translation. Just,
Yeah, I'll check.
just send it to
Yeah, I
the send it
checked
to the
today and I
group,
didn't
please.
see anything, but I'll
Okay.
check again.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Michael Duffy. Michael, you have the floor.
You guys got me?
Yes.
Well, I gotta tell you, I've enjoyed the meeting so far. My name is Mike Duffy. I'm a forester here in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I've been working for about 24 years in Redwood Country. I'm looking to be a part of the Environmental and Engineering Committee, and primarily just to provide any assistance or advice I can from my background and perspective of a resident here, but also someone who works with and cares about the environment, understands maintaining infrastructure, the costs of doing that, working with contractors, kind of the whole realm. And so really want to assist with the water district moving forward in really protecting their infrastructure for future fires and other natural disasters that are inevitable in our region. I've done a lot of work post CZU in cleanup of properties, and I understand that that's going to continue for quite some time. But yeah, that's really my focus. There's a lot of great applicants. You guys are kind of spoiled this time around, so just choose whoever you want to, I suppose, and I think you'll do fine, at least for that committee. Yeah, if it doesn't happen this time, I'm looking to maybe participate however I can in the future, and just want to keep people thinking forward. I know there's a lot of stuff looking backwards regarding the previous flood devastation and fire devastation that's in our region, but the next one's coming. So just want to keep forward thinking and how we're going to prepare for that moving forward as a community. So thank you.
Okay, Ken Landy. Ken, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I started on the engineering committee pre-pandemic and went through the transition into combining the two. And the observation that I can make was that, yes, there was a lot of great information presented from the environmental and engineering groups, but because we had both of them going on in the same meetings, people were cut short and we really didn't get a good chance to get a lot of the detail that was needed for either side. So I am in favor, whether I'm on it or not in the future, I would be in favor of re-splitting them back into the two separate groups. But if needed, letting one representative from one make a presentation at the other if it was appropriate. So, as I said, I've been involved with the committees for quite a while, and I am in favor of re-splitting them again. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other public commenters. Yeah. I see. I don't see any other public commenters. I don't see anybody else here in the room. Going back to board members then, Bob.
If the board will recall, I was opposed to the consolidation of engineering and environmental when it was proposed by our general manager.
Yes.
Back.
Yes.
And the reason that the general manager wanted to consolidate them was not only the overlap, but staff time. So the board would need to make sure it considers that as part of its decision-making process if we wanted to put that on a future agenda.
Yes.
Particularly given where staff is on time and that sort of thing. I still think it makes sense to have it split, but I also want to acknowledge the fact that it's not without a cost.
Right. And I will comment, it's not without a cost. I served on both committees for the period when they were separate as a board member. And what I found was a lot of the same thing got repeated from one committee to the other. Not that that's bad. The public was being informed, but what we didn't get was, well, what about the environmental, in particular, in the engineering committee? What about the environmental aspects of this project, and where are we on the? Oh, I don't know. We need to go, and then that follow up wasn't there. From my perspective, to be able to have that combined discussion in a meeting on a project as to the engineering, where are we engineering status, where are we environmental status on a construction project was helpful. However, I'm not opposed to splitting these. I think that's something that staff and board committee members should begin to assess then sometime early in the year.
Well, I would say as president, this might be something that you and John want to have a conversation about whether you want to put it on the January 2nd meeting or not relative to assigning committee.
And whether I think we'd have to go back since the board policy manual now.
Yeah, no, of course.
As it is one, somebody would have to revise the policy.
Well, I mean, you could go back to the 2022 policy where it calls out 4 committees. It would be very easy to do.
I think so.
Revert.
But
I
agree.
It has to be done.
Yeah. So I have that taken down as a follow-up note for myself. Okay.
I would still like to comment.
Sure.
So I was also on the E&E when it was just environmental and then when it combined, and I was really against them combining, but I do see now the benefits of having them together and why I had suggested upping the committee number instead of splitting it is because I kind of briefly talked with staff, and it just felt like that was going to be a lot on them right now to run 2 meetings. So I think that needs further follow up, but I would love to see the 2 of them split again because I feel like there's definitely a lot of environmental stuff that's going to be coming up with the conjunctive use agreement, and that we can go more into detail with that within that committee, and rather than having the engineering weighing in on that as well. And so that's kind of my feelings with the E&E. I would love to get some more people involved because I'm really stuck between getting that down to 3 people. So that's really hard for me right now. And then I just wanted to touch on what Mark Dolson said about him having, institutional knowledge. And it's not even really that for me. It's the ability to show up. These people that have been involved in these committees for a long time, and Mark Dolson has not ever missed a meeting this last year or a board meeting. And so I think that really means a lot to me, is that people here that are here now sitting, showing me that you will show up to that. It goes a really a long ways, because then I know that you're going to be showing up to these committee meetings, because a lot of times we get people on, they kind of fall off, and then we don't have any members anymore. So that commitment means a lot. That's all I.
Okay. All right. Right.
I don't have a strong opinion about environment and engineering, except for I think that in my experience working for an organization with committees, every committee meeting is tens of hours of additional prep for staff, and being short-staffed as we are, I would be cautious about that perhaps in a year or two when we've recovered our staffing levels, it would make sense. And then my comment about the head count, it is wonderful having the enthusiasm of the community to engage in this enterprise. I think we should try to make seats available on the committees. I am concerned that enthusiasm may wane over time. It's hard to sustain volunteerism. There's lots of other things to do. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for non-voting members of committees or alternate members of committees, or ways to invite people to join with the anticipation that if someone is unable to fulfill their commitment over time, that they would step off and someone else would replace them. And I would suggest having a expectation, like we do for board members on committees, that if you're missing more than a certain number of meetings, you're going to step off the committee or be removed.
Okay. Okay.
Well, it's already in the board policy manual. What used to be in the board policy manual was a more flexible membership size policy. The board will recall that, again, 2 district managers ago, and the president at that time said, no, we don't want to have flexibility like that. We just want to make it a max of 3 for the reasons that have been expressed here, plus the unwieldiness of potentially having 7 members or 6 is just more time involved in terms of comments and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So again, proceed with caution, but these things have all been dealt with before, right, and we can always go back to it again.
Right. Okay. Then I do want to follow up on the suggested process that I was bringing up before. The aspects of splitting engineering and environmental, I am hearing that here from at least one of the board members, or 2 of the board members, I'm not sure the count on that, and several members of the public. I think that's something we can consider going into the new year. However, for now, since our board policy manual says 3, I am requesting, or up to 3, that board members submit information back to John. Do you agree with my suggestion on submit that information to Jen? Select 3 public members from each of the 3 committees. If at some time in the near future we decide to make an engineering committee and an environmental committee, we'll revisit that and expand that to split up. But that's something that I need to discuss with staff before we go down that path. So, and Bob, you brought up a timeline to do that, since yes, we're driving to a January 2nd meeting. When do you need to have the packet put together for that January 2nd meeting? So let's start backing up from there. What's your, when do you send that out? When do you have to have it prepared? When do we have to have all of our answers to you?
27th.
27th, but I had already taken that off. So, I mean, if I have to come in, I'll.
Okay, you're taking the 27th off.
The 30th is still acceptable.
Right.
Yeah, I can still post it on the 30th.
But you need
Because
some
it's
time
just
to
the one
choose.
item, it would make it a lot easier. Yes.
Right, okay. No, what I'm thinking is, there's subsequent information from at least one candidate that I hear is probably lacking. Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, he just emailed me, so I'm asking him because it looks like he turned in his 1-page application at the front office.
Right.
It was not emailed to me, so if he submitted supporting documentation, I did not receive it.
Okay.
So
all right.
I'm gonna ask him to email back to me.
So, do you think it's realistic, reasonable for you to conclude by the end of the day tomorrow any outstanding information?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see why not.
So with that in mind, board members, do you think by what is end of the day Monday this coming?
Oh, the 23rd?
Yes.
Oh, that works. So we get the information tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, so end of the day Monday, submit selections for 3 members of the public for each of the 3 committees to Jen. And then if you can compile from there. If you have questions on the process, ping John or ping me and give you my thoughts on. Okay. Okay.
Sounds good.
Given that, we're tabling the rest of this election process until January 2nd. Okay, moving on then. Item 6D, the rate assistance program. Who's covering that, John? Should be Heather. Okay, Heather.
Good evening, board. Heather Ipoletti, finance consultant with the district, working as a senior advisor with Regional Government Services. The action before you tonight is to adopt a resolution approving the revised rate assistance program. A number of items with the rate assistance program have changed. On January 18th, the board increased the discount provided by the program from $15 per month to $20 per month. And then on November 21st, the board adopted a resolution increasing the budget from $25,000 to $28,000. Both of these items need to be changed in that policy to take that into consideration, as well as staff brought up definition of good standing needs to be changed as the district no longer turns off water for non-payment. And then also there's a need to correct the general manager's title in the policy. And this item was brought to the Budget and Finance Committee on December 11th. And I'll say that no consensus was received. And they suggested that I bring the policy as presented to them to the board for your consideration. That concludes my report.
Okay, questions then. Brian.
I have no questions.
Alina?
I have comments. Is it
Sure.
Okay.
Comments and questions?
Okay.
It's yours.
Okay.
For the moment.
Well, I think like the first edit, where it says until the program revenues budget for the fiscal year depleted or the maximum number of customers is reached. Will that?
Wait, yeah, sorry. Could you reference where are you?
It's number 2 on page 144.
Okay. All right.
Oh, fine. I think it was that one, or is it the next one? Is it? Hold on. I copied and pasted, and of course, I didn't copy and paste the cutout.
That's number 3.
I think it's number.
Oh, it's number 3. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, there it is. Number 3 on that. So when we're talking about until the budget for the fiscal year is depleted, is that gonna affect if like will it limit us if we add more customers? If it fills up, is that gonna limit us there if we put that wording in there like that?
The way the policy is written is that you essentially only take on so many customers for what board has adopted your budget for. So what I'm proposing here is right now there's a limit of 25,000 per fiscal year. What I'm proposing is the board determine with the adoption of the budget the amount that they're going to fund this program to. And once you reach so many customers, then the program essentially stops taking on additional customers without the board choosing to increase the budget for this program.
We could increase the budget if we wanted, if we hit that later.
You could just like
Okay.
I came to you
Okay.
in November with a $3,000 increase.
Okay.
But it
and then,
depends on that budget.
okay. Thank you. And then it also states in there, I'm sorry, I don't know what number it is, but I just copy and pasted, but it says any unused balance can't roll forward. Why is that?
It says a budget is for a year's time period.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so it's not like a pot of money, it's a budget, just like salaries and wages are budgeted for a 1 year time period.
Okay. And then there was a lot of edits in there that had to do with the meaning of good standing and the past due balances, you know, of 90 days within the last 12 months. I really don't like putting limitations on who can apply for this. I think that the people that are struggling the most to pay their bill, they're the most in need of this program. And many people might not know about this program until it's too late. And so that really worries me with that wording. Yeah, I think it's just said it again. That's about, I really can't support the wording of the 90 days delinquent in the last 12 months.
Okay, Jeff?
So 90 days is from the day of the first, they have a billing every month. So are we counting it from the 90th delinquent, from the third month or the first month? Where do we start in counting the 90 days?
There's a definition in the utility billing policy when an account is considered delinquent. And so there's a due date. So you start on day one at that due date, then it's delinquent.
Okay.
So it's 90 days from that date.
Okay. So at that point, they've actually had 120 days of water.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Overall, I'm in favor of the changes you've recommended here. And the 90 days, I mean, the previous policy was basically the same, except that because we were cutting people off. And if we, turned off the water, we weren't going to give them a deal on this. So, I mean, it really doesn't change. Actually, it's easier now because we're not cutting anybody off. They're still getting water. But they're delinquent. So I think this is actually a better policy than what we had before.
But the last one said if the water was shut off. So even if you got in good standing, because you had it in the past 12 months, you wouldn't qualify.
But we're focused now on the policy that's in front of us this evening.
Yeah.
And we understood your comment on the 90 days. So I'd like to move on and then. And if anybody else from the board has comment or issue with that, but I want to keep transitioning and get initial comments. Bob?
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge that we did receive a few comments from people regarding this particular area. I think it's important to acknowledge that. We had a very long conversation about this when the policy was first crafted back in, 2019 or 2020, as to the fact that those people who are most in need of this may in fact be the ones that are most in arrears. At that point, we basically came up with a cutoff part, but I think people were still uncomfortable with the notion. It's just that there was no other way of being able to say, okay, is there any restriction at any time to anybody? And is there people that might game the system? Maybe not the people we're trying to help, but other people might try to game the system. I don't know that there's any real great solution for this. One's going to be as bad as the other. I do want to make sure, though, that point out that we're not talking about free money, folks. you know, in terms of, well, we just willy-nilly increase it for whatever we need to at any point in time during the course of the year. This money, this non-Prop 218 money, I think that's the way I should say it, right,
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, is critically needed for helping pay off loans and other activities around construction projects. So I think when this was originally crafted, it basically was tied to the cellular money, maybe not directly in terms of accounting, but in terms of intent. That there was not the notion that this was going to continue to grow and grow and grow to whatever size, because, you know, when it's small amounts of money, maybe you can justify it as being de minimis. You don't have to do a big adjustment elsewhere. But there are people in this community that want to make this hundreds of thousands of dollars in size. That becomes material.
Oh, yes.
And that's a very different thing. This policy, in fact, basically encourages that to happen, or it will. The anticipation is that will happen over time. These programs, when they start, you know, the camel's nose under the tent, they do metastasize and get bigger and bigger. The solution, of course, is affordable rates, but, you know, this board has taken action on that to make things not affordable. So there we are. You know, I understand the intent. I know everybody's trying to do the right thing. I think it's ultimately going to be on the board to decide whether or not this is going to get up to a point where it becomes material and it starts impacting our ability to maintain either construction margins or our ability to pay back loans without cuts elsewhere. So I'm, as I've done with all the rate assist programs, because I think this ultimately needs to be solved by the state. I'll be voting against this regardless. But I do understand the intent of what people are trying to do. I acknowledge that. I just don't agree with that.
Okay. A couple of comments that I have. I did look at, I believe, all of the email comments that we received on this. And at least one of them, and Alina's comment, was addressing the 90 days limit. I believe that we have to put something in this as to a restriction for that. We're not turning off the water. We're just not compensating them anymore for or reducing their outstanding bill. I think that's appropriate. We are not a benevolent society of water purveyors here. So I agree with the way this has been revised. I do have one suggestion or amendment, and it's on page 144. At the top of this, since there is a date cited in the resolution itself and adopted by resolution number, shouldn't this say something like as amended on December, if this passes, as amended on December 19th, 2024?
Are you referring to the date at the very top under the title, or the date in number 3 this program will launch?
Just at the very top.
Yes, upon adoption, that will definitely say as amended with the resolution number and the year. Yes.
Okay, so that we understand for future reference when this was amended.
Correct. Okay. That will be changed once I get the final resolution number.
Okay. All right. That's the comment that I have. Okay. We have subsequent comments?
Yeah, if I could, you know, on reflection in relation to the 90 days and the 12 months, I guess I would put forward the idea that if if someone is more than 90 days past due, I agree that at some point we stop offering assistance and we want to incentive customers to get current in their payment of their bill. I think that having financial incentives such as if you're more than 90 days past due, you fall out of the program is an incentive. I think that prohibiting reentry to the program for 12 months after someone has become current in their billing corrupts that incentive. I think that in my experience, when I was barely getting by, doing something that helped me in a year was not much of an incentive. I was pretty much worried about the next few weeks and months. And so I think that having an incentive that says, hey, if you get current with your bill, you can re-enroll in the program right away, preserves that incentive and keeps someone from perpetually not paying and somehow accruing past due bills and accruing subsidy, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. Alina?
Yeah, no, I think it's that 12-month part that's in there that really worries me. Like I have a neighbor, they lost their home in one of their other homes in the fire. They're trying to rebuild, and then she lost her husband, and that was income. And she was having to choose between food and medicine and water, or rebuilding their CZU fire so she could get out from underneath it.
Right.
And she was very late on it. And then she finally got caught up. And then to tell her that, you're not worthy of this program, I think that's counterintuitive. So I think it's really that 12 months. But I do agree that if you are delinquent currently, yeah.
Okay, well.
Would that be eligible to re-enter the program as opposed to guarantee? Because if someone drops out, someone else may come in, go down the next line. I don't know that you want to hold the spot. Are you holding a spot if we're full up? All I'm saying, there's more complications around that.
Right.
So
that's.
I would view that as a reentry to the program, personally. But
re-entry
presumably
versus,
that
re-entry versus eligible, because at that point you may have to adjust the numbers.
Yeah, if you've already given their slot to somebody else.
Yes.
Then
and you're full up.
Yeah.
Right. And you're beyond the budget limit, or you're at the budget limit, which is where we are right now, then right.
All I'm saying is that when you're setting policy, you have to make sure you're accommodating corner cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And the corner case, which we seem to have run into, we haven't had to deal with this in the past, but we do have to deal with it now.
Right.
Is it a guaranteed reentry or is it eligible? And that is something I don't know has been considered yet.
Right.
I guess I am considering that, where in that any account 90 days past due will immediately be removed from the program. What I would have is reapplication is available after the balance has been paid, or the balance is current. I would just remove that. So it's a reapplication. It's a reapplication.
Yeah. They become eligible to reapply, not that they get back into it.
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
Reapplication.
I can go with that.
It's right there.
Yeah.
So, yes. I agree with that suggestion. Allow them to reapply. Yeah. Once they get current, but that doesn't guarantee them that they're going to get it. But I think that does provide the incentive. Get your bill current. We can't tell you at this point, yes, you will be, because we don't know how many other people are going to be admitted into the program before that. So, with that change, Heather, is that something that that you need to bring back to us, or is what we are describing here clear enough for you to make that
Point of order, this is a resolution, so we're going to be very specific about the language.
Yes.
So the language needs to be the language. We can't just say go and pass a resolution and
Can you,
whatever.
then let me ask, can you make that change and bring that back to us on January 2nd?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Reflecting the comment that we're making about
Yes.
the more in the last 12 months.
Correct. Essentially, I would be changing item 5C,
right,
removing the words in the last 12 months, and then changing 7A to A, I think it is called, where I'm removing the words after going 12 consecutive months. That's the reapplication part. I believe that those are the two changes to the policy as redlined for you that would need to be changed and brought back to you on the 2nd of January.
Yes, that.
Do we want to put additional language that states that reapplication is allowed, but admittance into the program depends on number of people and funds available? We need to articulate that.
Depends on availability.
Yeah, it'd be dependent on it.
Yeah, let's.
I mean, I think you need to be explicit about
Yes.
this.
Otherwise, people will have people show up with corner cases.
So provision 6, application process, 6B says approved applications will be granted on a first come, first served basis. So I
That
think,
maybe covers it.
I think we're.
No, I disagree. I think your suggestion, John, of some language that says something about the
Like reapplication doesn't guarantee you're going to get admitted to the program. I don't know how you're going to put that.
Sure.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And maybe that is covered under whether you make it 6C or something under 7 that getting the bill current allows you to reapply, but it doesn't guarantee. Some language to that effect.
Language has to be about that reactivation process.
You don't want somebody thinking, why reapply, so I automatically get it, and then we're.
Right.
Yeah, right. And then they're showing up here unhappy with
A
us.
reapplication is a new application.
All right.
Filing a
So,
new application, yes.
Heather, do you have
Yes.
any other question?
No, Thank you. Thank you, Director Smalley. I believe that I have clear direction.
Okay. All right. So we're not taking any action on this item, which is 6D on our agenda.
Do we still want to take public comment?
We're not taking, but it's on the agenda. Yes. Thank you for that, pointing that out, Jen. Public comment. I do see several online. Cynthia Denzel.
Yes, I did send an email to Heather. I'm not sure whether she received it or shared it with anyone else. I asked for data, if there is any, on the current use of the program. And I would like to know whether it's possible for ratepayers or other people to donate to the fund for this program, and whether the budget could be increased based on funds available if donations provide increased funding. And I am encouraged to know that the budget can be changed at different times in the year. So if donations were collected, that there's a possibility the budget could be revised.
Okay.
Thank you.
John, you want to
Yeah,
address that?
we had been made aware of this and talking with Heather, because there isn't a pot of money that we can transfer over budget to budget. We feel that there are some mechanisms already here within the Valley that can accommodate that, like the Valley churches or something. We just need to contact them and let them be aware. And that if they are agreeable to it, then we'll refer people who want to donate to some type of charitable. First of all, it's a 501c3, so it's a tax deduction for you if you're going to donate. But also, it's just easier as far as accountability. We don't have to worry about carrying over a pot of money every year. That's not part of it. But that's why we were just talking about how we don't transfer that over every year in the budget. It ends, we make a new budget. So for housekeeping, for bookkeeping, it would just be, we think, a lot better mechanism to coordinate with some of the other 501c3s in the area that would accommodate that.
Okay, all right, okay. Bob?
I mean, the other option, of course, is that if for whatever reason Valley Churches or similar organization doesn't agree to that because it's a little orthogonal to their central mission of sort of immediate and sporadic help, is for an organization to set up their own 501c3 or 501c4 operation with the sole mission of supporting people in this area. There's certainly no reason why that couldn't be done.
Right. Yeah.
And so I would encourage if people really are that motivated to address the skyrocketing rate that our district has encountered over the last decade or so, that they step up and do that.
Okay. Okay. Jim Mosier?
Yes, Jim Mosier from Felton. I just want to, I appreciate the proposed changes that you have directed the finance director to do. I'm in supportive of those. I'm also quite supportive of the fact that you raised the amount by $3,000 so that a few more people could get on the program. And I would hope that if a few more people did become eligible, you could again increase it. I don't see the danger of this program becoming hundreds of thousands of dollars being a reason why you wouldn't want to help people who are in need to deal with the rates so that they can be more affordable for those people who most need it. And so I encourage you to continue taking a look at this program, ways in which we can help those in the most need to get the help that they need, rather than trying to do a rate increase. I mean, a rate reduction that would give everybody, including those of us who don't need this kind of help, a reduction in their rates. Again, I think this is a very important program for the district so that we can help those most in need. And I agree with the changes that you have proposed. I was quite concerned about the 1 year language that was in that program. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you then. So we'll conclude this item and move on then to item 6E, the October finance report.
Good evening. Thank you. Again, Heather Ipoletti from Regional Government Services. There is no motion before you tonight. This report is informational only. It provides you your cash balances, including your restricted cash for your assessment districts and bond proceeds. There is one shining star in this report, and that is we have used the entire amount of the bond proceeds for the $15 million co-bank loan. There is a remaining balance of 732,000 in the 14.5 certificates of participation. I anticipate that those funds will be spent at, with using or the grant for the tanks project. There is a district portion, and that district portion qualifies for that $14.5 million bond. So it'll be over time that that money is spent. And there is also some retention dollars that haven't been spent on the closeout of the projects. And so I believe some of that will use down some of that 14.5. So it might be a little bit before that entire 14.5 is spent. Let's see, there is fire surcharge funds remaining as of October 31st for a balance of about 760,000. And I will say that the second meeting in January, the November numbers will be presented with a full finance status report, including the accounts receivable reports and the detailed reports that you see on a quarterly basis. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. So I do have to ask, that's a shining star?
Well,
that
it is because we are. Yeah, I say that it is one because I think every finance report, someone was asking, well, when are you going to spend these money? And two, the district was essentially supposed to be spending that money within 3 years. So the fact that we have spent it on the projects that the district designated, it's actually it is a good thing because it was important that we spend that money. So yeah, I'm calling it a shining star.
Okay, all right, thank you. I've not heard that in financial accounting before, but questions, comments on this, Alina?
No, thank you so much, Heather, for putting this together and all your work on it.
Okay, Jeff?
I'm fine.
Bob?
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions about that. So on the 2019 loan, will we be going back and updating the resolution then where we designated what the projects were for that loan?
I don't think that that's necessary. The Redwood, Garrett, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's called the Redwood Park Tank. Am I right?
Yes.
That tank is actually on that list for the $14.5 million bond. So I believe it's yeah, it's a little gray, but it is on that list. If we need to update that project list, and again, there's only 732,000 left. If we have to update that list, it's not just a board resolution, it's getting the bank to approve it as well. And we have far exceeded that 3 years. So ideally, I'd prefer not to go there. So if we're able to use it on that Redwood Park tank project, on the district portion, I think that is a prudent way to spend down these funds.
Okay, can we confirm that that's on the list? Because I do, it's also a matter of community transparency for me as well, in terms of the fact that we're not just taking money in and shuffling it around wherever we want to. We make a commitment to the community and what we're going to do with it, and we spend it on that. I get the part about the regulation, and we are well in arrears in that, but we did have the pandemic and we did have the fire, and those basically blew up the schedules that we had during that time. But that does, of course, call into question as to when that tank is going to be built, because that was something we had to do now in order to get it done. And we're, as you guys recall, and we are not done with it yet. Okay, the other question I had was on the operating expenses on the salaries and benefits line. Are you expecting that variance to continue linearly through the rest of the year, or does that include some one-off items that we won't see and that the number will asymptote to the budget number for the year? That would be on page 150.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's your with October, you're 33% of the year passed, and you've spent 38. At this point, if anything, I could possibly see that number going up if, for instance, if a finance director was hired. And so it's probably a budget that needs to be analyzed and determine if there's any one-offs in there. I don't believe there are any one-offs in that line. So we're at 38%, we're a little higher than a linear budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I take the 2.6 million roughly and multiply by 3, you get up closer to 7.8 million, where the budget's 6.8. That's a significant change. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why I was asking about this in the Budget and Finance Committee, because effectively the budget presented from the rate study, you know, my main concern was whether or not those were real numbers or BS numbers. And this number starts pointing toward the latter, not the former. And that also then has a cascading effect on what money is available for loans and capital improvement projects, or whether or not that rate study is going to be like every other one, the last two, where we come in with X and what we really spend on operating expenses is a multiple of that. So I'm really concerned about that particular number. I would appreciate knowing if there are any one time or whether that's a linear all the way through the end of the fiscal year.
The budget number for 24-25 had nothing to do with the rate study. It is a number adopted by the board when they adopted the 23-24 biennial budget.
No, I understand that, Heather, but in our budget and finance committee, we talked about cash flow, operating expenses, et cetera, and whether the expense number in that was based on reality or the rate study. It's the rate study. So if we need to get to where we need to get to a real number so that we understand what our cash flow requirements are going to be, particularly if we're looking at having to budget out a couple of years before we get reimbursed for FEMA, which is where all this kind of got generated. But of course, we'll be losing that institutional knowledge off the committee as well. Okay, so that was basically the question I had about expenses. On capital, the $7.8 million number, is that money we were expecting to get from FEMA, or is that money that we're spending on FEMA projects?
You're referring to the budget itself.
Yeah, the capital, under the capital, the grant FEMA funded, was that 7.8 million what we expect to get from FEMA?
I don't believe that. In fact, I know that is not all FEMA. That includes a couple of grants. That is budget, but that includes other capital grants than just FEMA.
Okay.
So that is all grants, and I believe that is a fairly real number.
Okay, so it might be worthwhile making sure we break out grants and FEMA going forward, given that we are having these issues with FEMA and getting paid. Just a separate line item for the FEMA items.
I agree with that. Grants, we're short of.
Yeah, we're
short of.
Yeah.
The FEMA is, well, kind of probably.
Well, the grant we're sure to give an execution.
Right.
But that becomes under our control, not under some guy in Washington that doesn't give a rat's behind about us.
Yes.
So,
And who might stiff us for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Okay,
So
great. Hey, Heather, thanks very much for putting this together. It is helpful to get these numbers in as close to real time as we can, particularly when we're looking at significant overages like the salary and benefits number.
okay.
Thank you.
Brian.
I have no comments, questions.
Okay. All right. Heather, thank you for this report. I don't have any other questions either on it. Moving on then. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Community comments. Does anybody have questions or comments on this budget item? I see none online. I see none here. The next item is the Camp Creme easement resolution. Who is? Okay.
Yeah, so this item is the Camp Creme easement resolution. The district would like to establish an easement with Camp Creme. It is for the amount of $3,000. And this easement is for the Peavine Pipeline Access Trail. When we had the California Conservation Corps out there removing the hazardous trees, they built a efficient trail in order to access the pipeline. And that trail started at Camp Creme and ended at the pipeline. And so in order to maintain our future access to the pipeline using that access trail, as well as to get reimbursed by FEMA, because you kind of have to have your access routes owned or have an easement for them. We would like to move forward with this easement. And the resolution before you today will approve the execution of the easement. So yeah, I'll open it to question.
Okay. Yep.
Looks entirely reasonable to me.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, I thought it was really well done, whoever drafted the easement agreement as well. Kristen, is this the path that we took when we did the walk?
Correct.
Okay. It looks like it's going to be widened a bit, or is that not?
That trail, potentially, but probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
I was going to say widening would be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
I would guess that the easement is a little wider, but actually getting out and clearing this stuff is.
Yeah, I mean, it made it sound like there might be widening going on, but for equipment or what have you. But no, it's really great, Chris. Thanks. This is good work.
Yeah. Right.
I have no questions. That's fine.
Alina?
I assume that Camp Creme is happy with that amount.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. They're a wonderful organization. So happy to, support them.
And prior to us, or prior to our subcontract consultant putting this in, did we get any concurrence from Camp Crane or?
How do you mean?
Well, they put this.
Oh yeah, Camp Crane was on board.
Oh, they were?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and cut that in there.
No, working with Alex Krem, who runs Camp Creme. He's a great guy.
He is.
They got wrecked by the fire, and they're now trying to rebuild. So hopefully, this little bit of money can go to help towards that. But also, he loves his trails out there, and so having another trail on the property, he was like, great.
A win-win then, for us and for them. Okay. Any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none.
I'd like to make the motion.
Okay, we'll let you make the motion.
Slightly different language. I move that the Board of Directors adopts the attached resolution approving an easement agreement with Camp Creme and authorize the general manager to execute the easement agreement in an amount not to exceed $3,000.
I'll second that.
Okay. Yes.
All right, President Smalley,
Yes.
Vice President Lang,
Yes.
Director Foltz,
Yes.
Director Hill,
Yes.
Director Largay.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay. Moving on then, the consent agenda. We have one item on that. It's the board minutes from December 5th. Does anybody want to pull that from the board? Seeing none, seeing no objections to that, I will consider that approved.
Point of order. We do have to ask for community.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, since it's on the agenda, is anybody from the public? I'm gonna have to get used to that again. Does anybody from the public want to comment on that? Events? If not, okay. District reports.
Do we need to vote on that as well?
No. Robert's rules lets us, if nobody's objecting.
Okay, nobody pulled an item?
Right, on that consent agenda.
Yay.
The board is in obvious agreement that if there is no objection, we will adopt the motion to accept the consent agenda items on there. Okay.
Well, I think there's still, this would be a question for Barbara because we've gone back and forth in this,
right?
Where we have made a motion and voted on consent agenda and where we have not.
Yes. I'm looking back at Robert's rules before I started.
I'm perfectly happy with Robert's rules on this.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't have to take, according to Robert's rules, no motion required and no vote required.
No motion required, no vote required if nobody's.
So you do need a motion.
No, if nobody is, I consider the consent agenda item approved. I'll get the full language on this. Okay. No, we didn't need to vote this. Okay, from what I'm looking at.
Nobody pulled anything.
Right. Okay. District reports. As the language here indicated, no action, no discussion limited. Yeah, it's information only. Written communication, we have none attached to this. Informational material, none. Given that, it's only 9:35. I'd like to time to go.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.